gewaltig. Sagt der Heilige Gemara. Shum hadayonim shepichsu shtus. If the dayonim ended up assessing a property so that they could sell it, for instance, to pay the ksuba of a woman, but shepichsu shtus, they undervalue the property by a sixth. So now they were mafsed the nichsa yitzayim by 1/6. Or what if they overvalue the property and they sold it for a higher price? And the Rishonim speak out that the same way the Yosy trust them, the people who they're selling the property to, are also trusting them to do a proper assessment. So now that they were charged too much, they also are wrong. So the halacha is up to Mishnah Mechron Batel. That purchase is going to be Batel. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says Mechron Kayim, because if you can just easily undo a transaction that Bezdin did in Cain, Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofa. What Koyach does Bezdin have if what they do can so easily be reversed? No different than any other shliach. Avalim also igeris b'karis b'neim. But if they made a letter of checking, which Rashi teaches as hachroza, they did a proper tendering process to properly assess the value of the property. The lashon b'karis. What does the word b'karis mean? Shemavakrin oisa b'nei adam alidei hachroza, because many people visit it. If this property is advertised a lot and publicized, well, then a lot of people are going to come check it out. It's going to bring a lot of attention to the property, and that will most likely bring out the proper value. So then, afilu machru shavamana b'masayim, or shavamasayim b'mana, even if they were off by 100%, machran kayim, the mecher will be kayim because it went through a process of achros. Iboyelu, clear to Gemara Shayla, shliach kaman. Zok Rashi, shliach detah, a shliach that was selling on behalf of somebody, and he undervalued or overvalued a property. Kaman daninale. How do we treat him? Ka'almona daninale. Do we treat him like almona that we already discussed earlier? Shebetos koldahu bottle. That even if she slightly is mistaken in her sale of the property is bottle. Like we learned in last Mishnah, if she sold a property that was worth a mana and a dinner, and she even undervalued it by a small amount by a dinner, still mecher bottle. So is that how we would treat a shliach? Oy kidayanin who, or maybe he's like dayanim, and his mecher is going to be kayim. The adatah b'shtus, and until he makes, at least even according to the Tanakama, he has still leeway to make a mistake up to a sixth before we'll be mevatel his mecher. And the Gemara elaborates as to the student of the Shaila. Rava Amar. Rava says, Amar Rav Nachman, in the name of Rav Nachman, that shliach kidayanim. The shliach is like dayanim, meaning he has up to a sixth before we're going to be mevatel his mecher. Rav Shmuel Bar Bishna Amar Rav Nachman. Shmuel Bar Bishna says in the name of Rav Nachman, it's kalmon. And even for a small amount, we're going to be mevatel his mecher. Rav Amar Rav Nachman shliach kidayanim, and therefore we'll say ma dayanim lav liditu, just like dayanim. They're not selling it for themselves, so they don't have a vested interest in making the wrong value for the property. As Rashi says, lav litzorech atzman moichem. So if that's the case, av shliach nami lav lididei. The shliach, when he sells it, he's not selling it for himself. So maybe we should also give him up until a sixth. La fuke almana de lidida. And almana we're much more strict with because she's selling it for her own benefit. But Rav Shmuel Bar Bisna Amar Rav Nachman kalmana. A shliach is like an almana. Ma almana yechida. Just like an almana, she's doing this on her own. She doesn't have consensus. Av shliach yah. The shliach also is doing it on his own. La fuke Bezdin. It's only Bezdin who we give them up to a sixth, because the Rabbim Ninu, Bezdin is not one dying by himself. There are multiple people involved in the process. How do we pass to this shaila? That shliach kalmana, a shliach is like an almana, and with the slightest mistake, we nullify the transaction. Now, before we go weiter, the way I touched the shliach was like Rashi did, like somebody who sets up a shliach. Tosfos has a kasha on this shot, because Tosfos told us, the Gemara told us yesterday, that when your shliach makes even the slightest mistake, you could say l'sakuna shadetich v'lo lavos. So Tosfos learns that the shliach that we're talking about here is a shliach bezdin. Okay, so Zok the Gemara Vaker. Why should this be any different than the brayso that we learned? Or which I believe it's a Mishnah. If one tells a shliach, say the troim, it's once again a Gemara we learned yesterday, a Mishnah we learned yesterday. Someone was mimana a shliach to take trumas on his behalf. The halacha is torim kadas balabais. How much does he take? Based on how much the balabais would want to give. What if he doesn't know the das of the balabais? Then torim bebeinis. So then he goes with beinis, which is 2% echad mechamisha. Piches asara ahosav asara truma to truma. So you see clearly that a shliach has some leeway. Since he didn't make a mistake, there's actually a variant. There's actually official rates that different people use, 140th, 150th, or 160th. So therefore, Amalei, the shliach can say, Lahachia Madatit. This is how I assessed you. So that's not a mistake. I assessed you that you are in one of these pre-printed, so to speak, pre-established categories. But when you sell for a wrong price, there's no pre-established price. To whoso, it's just a plain mistake. And therefore, Amar Lei, the Bailam could tell him, Lo yibayilach lemiti. You should not have made this mistake. Now, I believe the Acharayim add a little bit of explanation to this. And they say, when someone appoints you to sell a field, he's giving you authority to sell a field, and he's expecting that you're going to sell it for its accurate value. But if someone gives you shlichas to be mafresh trumas and maisros, it's incumbent on the person, on the mishalech, to tell the shliach how much truma to take. Am I a beinoni? Am I someone who's more generous? Am I someone who's more stingy? And I did it. So therefore, it's also svara to say that if the shliach picked the wrong rate of truma, that it shouldn't be bottled, because if the fellow was so makbid, he should have clarified to the shliach exactly what he wanted. Halacha kedivrei chachamim. The halacha is like the chachamim in our Mishnah, that you don't say ma koyach bezdin yafa. Rather, you say even bezdin, if they're off by a sixth, the mekach is bottled. Frakti Gemara, the less leiler Rav Nachman ma koyach bezdin yafa. Does Rav Nachman not hold of this svara that Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says of ma koyach bezdin yafa? How could you be mevatel a mekach from bezdin? Ebazoi, what is their strength? The Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. I, Rav Nachman, said in the name of Shmuel, Yisoymim shabo lachloik b'nichsei aveihem. Yisoymim that came to split up the nachla of their father. The halacha is bezdin mamidin lahen apotropos. Bezdin sets up for them apotropos. And Rashi says something fascinating. Bezdin mamidin apotropos is l'chol echad ve'echad me'aktanim. We don't set up one apotropos to oversee the estate and to separate it into fair halakim. Rather, each Yosem has to have his own advocate, his own representative, to fight for his own personal best interests. And uvoyer in lahem chelik yofa. And through these apotropsin, they pick, or each Yosem, the best possible chelik for them. Once this is done, higdilu, if these children became adults and now they have their own opinion, they could say, no, I don't want this. But Rab Nachman Didei Amar, Rab Nachman himself paskin, even if the children become adults and through Bezdin, the Apatruption had already split up the Nachla, they can't stop. You know why? They can't be Mavatlet? Because them came Makoyach Bezdin Yofer. So you see, Rab Nachman Shita is you do say Makoyach Bezdin Yofer. You do uphold a Chalukah that Bezdin made. So how could Rab Nachman in our Mishnah paskin like the Chachamim who do not hold of Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer? Dr. Mori Loi Kasha. When do you say Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer? That's if the Bezdin didn't make a mistake. There was no mistake in the value of the Nachla. In fact, each Yosem got a good chayla. There you say Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer. But in our Mishnah, when Bezdin made a mistake of a sixth, there you don't say Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer. If there is no mistake, so what's the problem? What exactly are these Yisraelim complaining about if there is no mistake? And for the Gemara Beruchos, not because the properties were valued wrong, but let's say Yosem A happened to have owned a property to the east of the property of his father, and Yosem B owned a property to the west of his father's estate. So the Yosem A would rather the eastern portion of the property, so it'll be contingent with his property that he already has, and Yosem B would want the western part of his father's property. And here they mixed it up. They didn't know who had which side. So as far as how they value the property, they did it perfectly, but they didn't take into account each Yosem's personal preference of what side it should be on. So there, Rab Nachman would say, Makoyach Bezdin Yofer. Let's see Rashi. Zokt Rashi, the second line from the top. Every representative made sure to fight for the personal interests of his tinup. What are they complaining about? I'd rather have my chelik on the east side of the property. Because I happen to have another property that I yashin from my mother's side, nothing to do with my father. So I'd rather have my two properties connected to each other. Zokti Gemara, ki aser Avdimi, Amar, when Avdimi came, he said as follows: Maisa, the aser Rebbe Kedivrei Chachamim. Rebbe Patskin Kedivrei Chachamim that you don't say Makoyach Bezdin Yofer. Amar lafana Prata, Benoy Shaber Lezer Ben Prata, Ben Benoy Shal Prata Gadol. Clearly, they like that name in that family. Im Kain, Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer. They had tightness to him. How could you reverse a sale? Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer. And when that taina was brought up, the Hichser Rebbe as a Maisa. And in fact, Rebbe said, no, I'm not going to reverse the sale. I'm going to maintain the sale. Why? Because I'm holding of Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer. That is the story of Rebbe. So you see, Rebbe upheld the svara of Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer. But you hear he didn't stop uphold it. Even after he already undid a mecher, he reestablished that mecher because of Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer. But there was another version of how the story occurred. Rav Dimi Masni Hachi. This is how Rav Dimi quoted the story, that after the sale was reversed, it was reestablished because of Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer. Rav Safar Masni Hachi. Ma'asu Bikesh Rebbe Lasoy. So Rebbe didn't actually do. He only wanted to do Kedivrei Chachamim and not say Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer. And before he had a chance to do anything, to reverse the sale, Amar Lefana Prata Benoisho or Belazav Ben Prata Ben Benoisho or Prata Gadol Imkein Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer. And there, Loy Asa Rebbe Yisamaisa. This time it prevented Rebbe from undoing the sale. So what is the difference between these two versions as to whether or not Rebbe had already reversed the sale and then he put it back because of Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer, or if he only didn't reverse the sale because of Ma Koyach Bezdin Yofer? Maybe this is the machlokes between these two versions. The Hakam Mar Savar Tabidvar Mishnah Chayzer. One mandamar holds that if there's a mistake in the Dvar Mishnah, meaning if you say Makoich Bezin Yofa, which is a Meforish Mishnah, Meforish Psak, and you made a mistake, you went against that. For instance, Rebbe, who had already been Chayzer the Mekach, nevertheless, since he made a mistake because he should have paskin Makoich Bezin Yofa, he's Chayzer what his Psak was. Umar Savar ain't a Chayzer. And the other mandamar holds that even though he made a mistake in the Mishnah, which means he didn't go with the Svar of Makoich Bezin Yofa, you wouldn't change it. The reason why Rebbe changed it is because he didn't do it yet. Before he did it, he heard the Svar of Makoich Bezin Yofa and he refrained from doing it. So maybe that's the Machlokes. You don't have any right that that's the Machlokes. The Chula Al Matab of our Mishnah Chayzer. Maybe everybody holds, even if the case was where there was no Tov B'Dvar Mishnah, where Rebbe merely refrained from being Mevatel Mekach, maybe he would hold that Minadin Avada, even if he was Chayzer Mekach, he would turn it around again because of Makoich Bezin Yofa. It's just a machlokes of what happened. Umar Savar Hachi Avamaisa. Umar Savar Hachi Avamaisa. Who said you could read into a halacha out of the story? Maybe that's just the way the story occurred. Let's see the Heilige Rashi. The Hichse Rebbe Samaisa. The Nir Bein of Tam Hogun Masha Shanina b'Mishnah Seinu. He held that the Tanakama's psak in our Mishnah that if there's a mistake of 1/6, it's the right thing. I'm sorry, that's what Rebbe first did, and then when he heard of Makoich Bezin Yofa, he said, "No, I can't reverse the sale, even though the mistake was more than a 6. We need to reestablish the sale." Why? Because Rebbe held it was right what we learned in our Mishnah. Imkein Makoich Bezin Yofa. Lema b'Hapligi, Rabdimi v'Rab Safra. This machlokes is between Rabdimi, if Rebbe was choizer what he did, or Rab Safra, if Rebbe merely refrained from doing what he wanted to do, is Rabdimi suffered dying at B'Dvar Mishnah, Shalayosna to the Mishnah. If a dying didn't do like a Meforish Mishnah, choizer, he had to reverse his psak. You don't say he did what he did, and then the Yishalami Beisai, the dying has to pay the person who he harmed, but avada the psak remains. When do you say that? If he made a mistake in an assessment of how he thought and analyzed the situation, that's where we say the psak remains strong, and the dayan who wronged one party has to pay from his own pocket. But by a Dvar Mishnah, which is such an often grabba mistake, there you're choyzudin. The Hainami in this question here, Makoich Bezin Yofa, Dvar Mishnah, we consider it an often grab mistake. Even though the Ma'aser is a machlokes to know about it, but Harei Nos and Talmud Dvarav, Rab Shimon gave a good svara of Makoich Bezin Yofa. So therefore, it's pashut that that's the way we should go, and it's pashut that this would be Tov B'Dvar Mishnah. Well, let me just finish Rashi. Rab Safra she'ein shoyna also v'hichser. Rab Safra, who learned that the story wasn't that he did it and then he was chayzer. Savar imasa lo yachal achzer. Had Rebbe already been chayzer the Mekach, he wouldn't have been able to put it back on.
The Shal is Muslim Muslims know the Master. The Shal is Muslim the Master you had. Right? So
if that's the Shal, you can't bring a right from him. You can't bring a right from him.
Right.
You want to have him in it.
As a machlokes in the Master.
Maybe the reason why Rab Safra said the story over this way, well, verstanden, dass ich kennt an der andere Weg, weil wenn sie gewinnt der andere Weg, wollte das nicht heute gewinnt. Okay, gewaltig. There's actually a question of nowadays, what's Tov B'Dvar Mishnah? So halacha l'maisa, if someone is taught on Mishnah, he's choizer to Mecca. But that was in those days, in the time of the Meroim. But what at the time of the Gaonim, if Tov B'Dvar Gemara? So everyone holds that's also choizer. The shaila is, what if a Rishon made a mistake in the words of the Gaonim? That's where there's a shaila if you say Tov B'Dvar Mishnah. But nowadays, if a person didn't remember a Bach, I'm not sure if that's called, that's pashtus, not called Tov B'Dvar Mishnah anymore. Zok Gemara Vayter. Rabbi Yosef. Armalasa is a vina, and we learned this Gemara already. An almana who sells assets of the estate, and then an old balchoiv of her husband comes and says, "This property is meshubit to me." The halacha is achrayis hayasmi, and now he seizes from the lekeach this property. Who has to pay back the lekeach? Not the almona. The yisoimim, the estate, is the one who provides the achrayis on the sale of the estate. Zok Rashi.
So again, the text is from the almona and
No. The almona sold a property that belonged to the state to Moshe Pippin. And then the Bachov came and took it away from Moshe Pippin. Who does Moshe Pippin go to collect from? He goes to the estate, not to the almona. Zok Rashi, Achrayusa Yasmi, Imnim Tzesasot Gzula, if it turned out that this field that was in the nechasim of the nifter, that the almana sold to a third party, and it turned out this field was stolen, and now the original owner comes to the lekeach and takes it away. Or is mishubetov v'torfa min lekeach b'chayvay, and the original owner went to the lekeach and took it away because it's owed to him. The lekeach turns back to the estate to collect. The almana in her sale of the property, she wasn't selling it on her own. She was just a shliach on behalf of the Yisrael. And who Bezdin the Zoven, and if Bezdin sells a property of the estate to pay off the ksuba, once again, achrayis hayasmi. Zok Rashi, who Bezd b'chein beidin the Zoven, so the Yisraelim, l'mozanisha v'abonois, achrayis hayasmi.
So just that when I got inside versus not which versus
It doesn't really matter. The reason why Rashi doesn't say Keksubos is because that she could do herself, depending on the matzah.
What happens if she took the field and then
She herself took a field? She can't. We stayed anyway. They can be chashem. That's a goonish. We don't just do it.
She took her.
Bezdin, that's only Bezdin gave it to her. She can't do it by herself. She can't moon it on by herself. We learned yesterday that they can say Mishamah. And if Bezdin get it,
so if Bezdin get it,
and then the Bachov takes it away, so she goes back to the assignment.
She doesn't send him to the side.
That's right. Okay. Zok to Gemara. Pshita, it's Pasha. Almanah is trichalei. You're right. That an almanah who sells a karka, the achrayis is on the Yisraelim, that's Pasha. The chiddush is ki trichalei beidina. The chiddush is that even when Bezdin sells, the achrayis is on the Yisraelim. Why is that a chiddush? Mao the tema. What would you might say? Zok the Gemara turning on to Kufamid Beis. This called the Zabin mi beidina. Adaita lemepek lekala who dezaven Zok Rashi. Whenever Bezdin is selling a property, that creates a big buzz, and therefore, if somebody hears that this property is for sale and he knows it's his property for them to gamvit, or because he's a balchoiv, he would have heard that Bezdin is selling this property. So Rashi called the zaven bedina adaita the nafek lekala zaven the vishen machrin bachroza. When Bezdin sells it, it's with big advertisement and publicity. And the lekeach is sure Allah seeking. If there was anyone with any claim to this field, would come and be moichen now. You would have thought that anyone who buys through a sale of a Bezdin is not buying b'achrayis because he doesn't feel he needs achrayis. He feels safe. Kamash Shalom, that even he has achrayis, and that's why the Gemara tells us that any sale, even if Bezdin, the achrayis is on the Yorshim.
He buys it from Bezdin because he wants to have the biggest insurance.
Well, why would Bezdin give him more insurance than anybody else?
He knows that if Bezdin does it, then there'll be my car Bezdin use it. That means that he knows the Bezdin for sure does.
What better insurance does he have? Lamasi doesn't have any better insurance. The Achrayis he would get to be bought from anybody.
They check it out. They make sure.
I hear. And there is such a svara. But fakir, that's why it's chayzer, right? The Mishnah says that when Bezdin sells it, if they sold it for too cheap, it's chayzer. But if they sold it for too expensive, it's chayzer as well. The question is why? They got more money. The teretz is a bit. They was chayved also relies on Bezdin. So they actually rely on Bezdin. So here, it's a good story. Let's see the Gemara back here. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, you say in Cain, Ma koyach Bezdin Yafa. So Zok the Heilige Gemara. Akama, is there a shear, or you'll say Ma koyach Bezdin Yafa, even if they so terribly under or overvalued, or is there a limit even to Ma koyach Bezdin Yafa? Amar Puna by Yehuda, Amar Pshei says, Ad palga, till a half. If Bezdin sold a property worth 100 for 200, or they sold a property worth 100 for 50, there you don't say Makoyach Bezdin Yafa. Tani Namahachi. No. At palga means 100% difference. So even if they sold it for half of what it was worth, so that's what it means. If they were mazik Yisayim, because they sold it for half of what it was worth. So if they sold it for half of what it was worth, so then they were mafsed the Yisayim half. So you're saying if they oversold it, should also only be half? I'm not sure. Let's see what the Gemara clarifies. So he sold it for half, or for double. So here the Mishnah, here the Bracha is very clear. The halach is machar and kayim. The mecher is still kayim. Omar Ameimar Mishmeid Rabbi Yosef, Bezdin Shemachru Shaloi B'Achrosa. If Bezdin sold without Achrosa, so they didn't do their job. So let me just go back a second. So this is Mecher and Kaim, but if it's even more than that, if it's more off than that, then even the Mecher would be bottled. Now, a member saying Anulah. What happens if Bezdin didn't do the proper diligence? They were supposed to sell B'Achrosa, and they didn't sell B'Achrosa. So what's the halacha? Bezdin Shemach Shaloi B'Achrosa Nasu. It's as if Kamoshatov. So it's mashma, even if they didn't make a mistake, it's as if they made a mistake. Nasu Kamoshatov B'Dvar Mishnah. It's as if they were tired B'Dvar Mishnah. The Choshrin and the Mekach is bottled. Rashi says the Einoimrim Masha Asha Asoi V'Yeshalami Beisai. They don't say that the sale is good and now Bezdin's got to pay up. Elahadrus Vini, the Mecher is bottled. Let's think about this. Nasu, Vadai told. Rashi Nasu bitmiya. What do you mean? It's as if they made a mistake. Havadai told b'davar hashana b'mishnah. Why are you saying it's as if they were told b'dvar mishnah? They were for sure told b'dvar mishnah. The mishnah says they have to make achroz. It's nan shuma yisoymim shloshim yoyim. When you're shotting up a property for yisoymim, you have to be machroz it for 30 days. And shum hektish is shishim yoyim. It's for 60 days. Zok Rashi, shum hektish gizbor amoicha karkash alektish shishim yoyim. Moishchin yimechroz, they schlep it out longer. Umachrizin, it's a very intense the process. Umachrizin ba'boiker uba'erev. Every morning and every evening they have to make an announcement about this property for sale. Zok to Gemara, imeahi, if you only had that Mishnah, havamina hanimi l'shliach. That's only if a shliach did it, then it's going to be bottled. Aval Bezdin loy, but maybe if Bezdin did it, then you wouldn't reverse it. Kamash Malon, even if Bezdin does it, you reverse it. Maybe it means a shliach Bezdin. Or maybe Shuma Yisoymim, Shloshim Yoim, Shuma Hekna Shishim Yoim, that's when the shliach sells it. But when the Bezdin does it, maybe they can sell it right away because they're able to assess it right away. Kamash Malon, that even Bezdin has to do this. Eisvei fragt more. Eisvei Rabbi Ashi Lamim. Shuma dayonim shepichsu shtus or yosiru shtus mechran bottle. That's what our Mishnah says. Ha shava b'shava. What if it was shava b'shava? They sold it properly. Mechran kain. Then their mecher would become kain. So let's think about it. How did it happen that they made such a mistake? Maila, Dloyachos. Pashus, they didn't advertise it. And Vivaldi didn't advertise it. That's why they made a mistake. So if that's the case, the fact alone that they didn't advertise it should be enough. Elamai, just the fact that they didn't advertise isn't enough to be mevatel the mekach. It's only because there was a sirishtos or a pichstos. Let's say our Mishnah is speaking b'da'achris. So you thought we had a raya that if it was loy achris, the mekach is not bottle. So tomorrow, no, maybe our Mishnah is speaking with achris, and some of they still made a mistake. Correct tomorrow, you can't say that because our Mishnah cannot be speaking where they announced it. Because how we the sefer with achris, the sefer of our Mishnah first speaks about when they did the igeris, which means that's when there was achrosa. Only in the sefer. Vice the reis in the reisha, there was no achrosa. I mean, the sefer with the achros have a reisha with loy achros. The Ketani sefer. Then the Mishnah says also igeris b'kairis. They made a letter of checking, which Rashi for teaches as achrosa. Then afilu machu shavamana b'masayim or shavammasayim b'mana mechon kayim. So clearly the reisha of the Mishnah is speaking with the loy achros. And even if it was loy achris, we say the mekach is kayim, as long as they weren't pechsuishtos or yosirishtos. And we're going to have states with the loy achris. And if it's loy achris, you should have a raya that the fact that they didn't make achras alone won't be mavatal the mekach. The Mishnah, right? But Vater Rose als bis jetzt die Mishnah wird nicht wegen Achros. So that's the Gemara's raya that loy Achros alone won't be Vater the Mekach. Only loy Achros if there was a mistake.
So started with the mistake is.
If there's a chruza, it's never brutal. But if it's without a chruza, it's only brutal if it was a mistake of ishtis. And the problem is, we want to clear maybe without a chruza, that alone should be mavatal of that. That's right. You have to speak with loyachus. So why can't you bring a raya from our Mishnah that loyachus without a mistake shouldn't be a problem? But like Asher. Kan bidvarm shemachrizn alein, kan bidvarm shein machrizn alein. The reason why it's really if it's loy achris that alone is mevatel the mekach. The reason why in our Mishnah, even though it was loy achris, we're not mevatel the mekach is because it's things that you normally aren't machris. There are certain things that you don't call out. What things don't you call out? Ve'elo in dvarm shein machrizn alein, ha'avodim v'metaltelin v'ashtoros. These three things, the minig is not to make hacharaza. Avodim taimamai. Why don't we make a hacharaza that this evidence for sale? Shema yishmu v'yivrachu. I guess if they know that they're going to be in the public and they know that they're being sold to this, they're going to have a lot of opportunity to escape. We're afraid they're going to escape. It's better they shouldn't know about it. You should keep it quiet. Or metaltal nishtar shema yignavu. If everyone knows that for the next 30 days this is going to be in public display, so there's time for people to plan to steal it. So therefore, in our Mishnah, even though there was no achroza, it wasn't mevatel. But if they were often and valuing it by a shtos, they're already it's chosher mekach. But a property which you're not worried about selling, there you need achroza, and could be even though there was no achroza, even if it was sold for the right amount, it will still be batel mekach. Zok Rashi shemi yiglebu kishenasafin leroisam kedei leleicham. When everyone crowds around to look at the merchandise, someone can give it a chap. They sell a chayv that was owed to the estate. So that's one shot. So one shot is there are some assets that you don't advertise. There's another shot. There's also certain times where you don't machris. The Amri Nahardoi, Lechaga, Lemazoini Lukfura, if it's to pay head taxes, or it's to give mezainis to the Yisayim, or give mezainis to the Almana, or Lukfura, or to bury the mace, there's no time then to do a chrasa. So there are a lot of sell rather without a chrasa. But nevertheless, if they devalued it too much, that would be bottle, and that's what our Mishnah is talking about. So Rashi b'shah shemachrizin kidim afarish sheyeshah she'en pnai lahamtin meshach yemei achrasa. Sometimes we need the money right away. We can't wait 30 or 60 days. Kagoin lecharga ulemazoni ulekfura. What's the charga? Lefroya lemelech kesef kol goyles hayisayim to pay the head tax. Zog to Gemara Vacher. V'boisema kan b'makom shemachrizin kan b'makom shemachrizin. It has to be the right item. It has to be the right time, and it has to be the right place. The Omer of Nachman, they never made achrazos in Ardah. Why not? Savarina, we thought the reason was Mishum de Beki Bishuma, that in our daughter Besner have this big mumchoyim, so they don't need to do this assessment with achroza because they'll know how to value it properly. But that's not shot. Why did Rab Nachman say that achroza is not necessary in our door? Because if they made achroza, nobody would want to buy it. You know why? Mishum the korilahu b'nei achli nisti dachrasta. Oh, look at you! You bought the chusum for the assignment. You chazav this. Now you're depleting the estate of the assignment. So making achroza would make it impossible to sell because nobody wanted that stigma that they're like the vultures who are eating away at the estate of the assignment. So Rashi Mishum the Karlu Genai v'cherpe. It's a bezoyin for somebody kishekoinim nechosim shebezdin meichlim. Why? Levisha machmas doichik shanoisha loichet says hayasoim. Why are they selling? Because the Yisayim owe money and we're pressuring them. Oh yes, aloiva. Or they're pressuring the loiva. So therefore, loikim alakuchais bezoil. Then the vultures could come in and buy it for cheap because someone's desperate. Someone who's a vulture and comes and makes money off Yenim Sudas, people are mavazin them. They call them you vulture what you are. You prey on these innocent Yisayim. The Kohen Lahem Oichle Sades Achrosa. That's an insult. He's an Oichel Sades Achrosa mit nicht Meshadach Zamadim. Rav Yudah Mishmuel. The Taltlin shall Yisoimim, the Metaltlin of Yisoimim, not Karka, Shaman Oison, you assess them Umoichin Oison the altar. You sell them right away. In other words, you don't make a long Achrosa. Rav Chisda Amar Aviyah says, you sell them in the shuk. You don't have to make achraza. You can just sell them in the shuk. It's not a machlokes. If there's a shuk right nearby, that's where you would sell it. If the shuk is far away, then you just sell it. I'm sorry. The market day. So Rashi the mikra shukah, yom the shukah. So instead of just selling it, you could wait to the yom hashuk. So it's not a geographical thing. There's a Yom HaShuk, so I guess it's easier to sell to get a better price. So that's when you sell it. Otherwise, you sell it whenever you have it. Zok Gemara weiter. Rav Kahana have biyodei shichra that Rav Mesharsher b'alchalkoi yasma. Rav Kahana had in his possession, I guess he was apotropos, that he had beer that belonged to Rav Mesharsher b'alchalkoi was a Yosy. Now the question is, the longer he holds on to it, the better chance it has to spoil. So there's a reason why he would want to sell it quickly. Nevertheless, Shehiyah Rigla, he didn't sell it until the regel where there was a big demand for beer. Omar, he said, even though it's actually going to start turning bad a little bit, it still could die for me to wait because mais is zuzah charifa. It's going to bring in good money if I keep it for the Yom Tov, where there's a lot of demand. Zok Rashi, it is a tam hakorb lachmas. You taste that it's like about to turn. It's like when everyone puts their nose in the milk. It's a yogurt, it's an ishgit. It means it's not bad enough that it's pushy that it's not good. Zuzah charifa, schlechte beer bringt it on scharfe geld. Memayer lovo, it brings money good quickly. Levishakoyel tzrichen lekach. At around Yom Tov time, everyone needs it, and therefore umavi noise, they bring cash. The ein makifin leon bashroi. Normally, someone who buys might want credit, but someone who's coming for Yom Tov and everyone needs, everyone brings cash. That's right. That's right. Ravina have biyodei chamra the Ravina zute yasma. Ravina had in his hands the wine of Ravina Zuti. Maybe there was nephews. Ravina he had to sell the wine of Ravina Jr. Bar Achse. It was his nephew. It was the son of his sister. But Hava L'Didei Nami Chamra. He had his own wine to sell as well. Hava Kamasak Leila Sichra. He brought his wine together with the Yisraelim's wine to Sichra to sell. But he wasn't sure if it's right that he should sell them together. Also, the Kamei Rav Ashi, Amalei told him, Ma'olam tuye bahadon. Can I bring them together? And what would be the problem of bringing them together? Zokt Rashi, Ma'olam tuye sheish lochish latitva svina. You know, if I bring it all together, maybe the boat will sink. Amalei, he told him, Zil, don't worry about it. You don't have to watch the Nichsi Simon more than you'll watch yours. If you're willing to take yours on the ship, you can take theirs on the ship. And there's actually Shalat Halacha of what's considered a good shmir if someone gives you something to hold. If someone gives you something to hold and you're taking it on a plate, someone gives you a package, you take that to school. You put your stuff in the overhead bin. Are you allowed to put his stuff in the overhead bin? What if you put his stuff in the overhead bin and it gets stolen? Is it called your pshaya because you weren't watching it the whole time? Or since you were doing with it whatever he would have done with it, that's considered good enough. Okay, Kavalti. Let's stop here and we'll be mamshik tomorrow and maybe let's chapar on the Mishnah. Let's chapar on the Mishnah. Hamima Enes. Enes is a Ketana whose mother or brothers married her off. So she's not really married midaraisa. She's only married midarabanan and she can easily terminate her marriage. Hashniya, a woman who it's be'etzem also her to be married midarabanan. Well, idleness and a woman who's an idleness, which is a mektos, ein lahen ksuba, they have no ksuba, v'loy peris, and no peris, v'loy mezoinais, and they're not entitled to mezoinais, v'loy belois, and they don't have belois, which is the leftovers of what they brought in, they get to keep. Zogt, the Heligat Rashi, Hashniya, Shniya la'arayis. She's also mediver soifen, shem mediver soifen, and of course, bivamas berk beis, ein lam ksuba. Mama Enes doesn't get ksuba. If she was mamayin, she walked out of the marriage. So why would she be entitled to ksuba? Shania doesn't get this knosed rabbananu. Could there really be a bamas for perikish mudaris? Mipnei shehi margilosai lenoisa. Why is it that a shnios doesn't get? Because she wants him to marry her. She'enim hafsedes klum b'nesuin. She doesn't lose anything. A shniya doesn't lose anything by marrying be'isr. She'enin nefelelas, she'enin nefselesben. A shniya doesn't become apostle if she marries someone. Therefore, v'lo kosher. So we have to sanction her at least that she doesn't get ksuba. And the idleness we should make atosu. So she doesn't get ksuba. V'lo peris. What does peris mean? Din peris. She doesn't get the benefits that she receives due to the fact that her husband eats the peris of her nichsim aluk. And what is that? That's that the husband's machayev himself to redeem her, to ransom her if she gets captured. So Einla, these women don't get it. And therefore, if this one of these wives were captured, the husband doesn't have to be paid her. The Tanai Ksuba kiksuba. The Tanai Ksuba is just like the Ksuba. The Chivin the Einla Ksuba, Einla Tanai Ksuba. Since these women are not entitled to the ksuba, they're not entitled to the k'nai ksuba either. There are those who say, "Afloy peris, im achlon ein yishamlu peris." If he ate peris, he doesn't have to give it back to him. The alpha of the kaimalon, but perkin de lo'il. Teknu perkonya takas peris nichsimalug shu oichel kidetnan loy kasav law. What if he didn't write in the ksuba im tishtaboy afrikinach? Still chayav of toisa because it's a tnai ksuba. Now there's without been in either. All of these times are not written in our ksuba.
It's valid.
So I'm not sure how that works. Right, so the thing, even if you don't say it, it's still valid. That's exactly what I'm saying. It is still valid, so it's not bad. The high loy karinaba voisvinali chlulitu. These women, the lotion was is I'll take you back and I'll marry you. All these women can't say that. Afilu nevertheless, lo yishalem peris. She doesn't have to pay back her peris. T'tnai ksuba k'ksuba. So zokrash keheka de kansura bonon the loigavi nichse tzoim barzel shechnisaloi mishalah b'teres ksuba. The same way they consider that she can't collect back her nichse tzoim barzel, she loses it. Kansua nami, they also consider her loitigva mine peris sha'achal. But she can't take back the pears that he ate that he really shouldn't have eaten because he can't redeem her. But Tanakh Suba shall pay. Well, he doesn't have the Tanakh Suba doesn't include him because he only has to redeem her if he can take her back as a wife. But it's not a chiv of tnai ksuba. It's not a chiv of tnai ksuba, right? Why she'ene kasav b'shtar ksuba? V'af din Paris. So therefore, he doesn't have to get back to Paris. The chen mezonius namit tnai ksuba. That he had to support his wife is only part of the tnai ksuba. L'kaman b'perik basra amina keitad amru mima'enes elam mezonius. What does it mean mima'enes elam mezonius? You can't say that while she's still married to him, she doesn't get mezonius. If the husband went to Medina Sayam, Vilovsa, and she borrowed money while he was away, and she used that money to buy mezonius, then she was in mind that when he comes back, he doesn't have to pay back those expenses. But normally for his wife, he would have to pay. What does it mean? The worn out begodim, Shavialoi Bishuma, that she brought these begodim into him as nichlet term barzel, the lovshon, and he wore them. Who the lovshon? Who ain't machzirin lo b'yitziyasa? He keeps those begodim. He doesn't give them back there.
He keeps the begodim, or
Yeah.
have to pay.
No, he keeps the begodim. No, he never has to. On nichsim alug, he gets to wear the begodim, and he doesn't have to pay for what they were devalued. But he doesn't even have to give back the worn clothing. Now, I guess we're talking about nichsim alug. She brought in begodim, so the pairs of the begodim is that he gets to wear them. What if the person knew that this woman was an islandess and he married her and he accepted? Then yesh l'ksuba, because that's not a mekatos. Almanu l'kain gadol. Rashi says that yesh l'ksuba and almanu l'kain gadol gets ksuba. Why? Mipnei she'ipsula vlad apostle. Her vlad will apostle as well. So we don't need to cancel her. She has good enough of a reason not to want to be in such a marriage. She won't convince him to make the suing because she doesn't want to have children with this man. He's the one who wants her. And he's being mishtadl, he's trying to convince her to marry him. Right. So he's trying. So mishadla. Okay. Mishadla linasiloi. Leficha kansu oisoi ksuba. So they're adrab. We make him give ksuba because we want to convince him not to marry her. So Amalekah Gadol or Grusha V'chutz L'Kainedit or Mamzer Shin Yisrael, which are Al Chai Ve'Lavin or Bas Yisrael Nishin Mamzer Yesh Lam Tshuba. Okay, let's stop here. We're already less than 2 weeks away from finishing the Masechta.